Yep, can't hear you, Wizard.
Is that better?
Yep, you got it.
There
All
we
right.
go. Greetings.
All right. Greetings, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. Coming at you today, we're going to talk about reverse Morris trust this morning or this afternoon. And before we get into that, first I want to remind everybody hit that like, share, and subscribe button for us. And if you have some love to share through the PayPal link, it's down in the details section below. And the StreamYard link is down there for anybody who wants to join the panel. Welcome, Russ and John. How you folks doing today?
Doing good.
Doing well, brother. Hope all's well with you as well.
Awesome, awesome. So the first thing I want to talk about today is a term called replenish before we get into reverse Morris. And what we're looking at, let me get my screen share up here. One of our main duties in life is to replenish the earth. And there's two places where they mention this in the scriptures. Genesis 9:1 and Genesis 1:28. Of course, Genesis 1:28 is where he says, and God blessed them. And God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. The next one, Genesis 9:1 says, and God blessed Noah and his sons and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. What is replenish? Remember, we went over that definition the other night of plenary and plenipotentiary, and this is what we're talking about. Having full power as plenary is defined. He's telling you to go forth and replenish the earth of what you use out of the earth, telling us that we are creators in his creation to continue his creation. One little term here, subdue. So our duty in earth is to replenish what we take from it. We're supposed to return what we take. Subdue. There is something due and there is something subdue. We are to subdue as a duty and replenish what we take. Does that make sense for everybody?
It does for me.
Yep, sure does.
So is that kind of similar to like a reverse process? If you take, then you got to give back. That's what we're dealing with, folks. In simplicities, that's what we're dealing with. Replenish as a verb means provide. By the providence of his grace, he already provided. And if we take what he provides, we're supposed to give back. This is when your cup is full and wells over. You're giving back. To fill up. Fill repeatedly. Fill completely. Full. From pi root pele, there's that same root again. To fill. To fill up again. Restore to a former amount or condition. Restore to a former amount or condition. Renew, fill, again, knock off, romance, treadmill. These are just other words similar in base. So let's look at the reverse mortgage. Because that's what we're doing, is we're filling completely by giving back what we took. That's what the redemption is that we're talking about. We're buying back. So in a reverse Morris trust, says definition, benefits and tax savings. A reverse Morris trust is a tax optimization strategy in which a company wishing to spin off and subsequently sell assets to an interested party can do so without paying taxes on any gains made from the disposal. So what's a spin-off? Is that like a franchise? Would that be the Citizen? Would that be the spin-off of what you were born as? And the assets are always going to be related to the data elements. Greetings, Truth and Empowerment. Good to see you again today.
Greetings, greetings.
And then it goes on to talk about a RMT is a form of organization that allows an entity to combine a subsidiary. The states are subsidiaries to the United States. The residents of the state are subsidiaries to the state. That was spun off with another company free of taxes, provided that all legal requirements for a spin-off are met. To form an RMT, a parent company, the United States, must first spin off a subsidiary or other unwanted asset into a separate company. So the United States, like I said, they don't want dumb people. So the spinoff is started in the state with a public education system, and those that can supersede that and go outside of those bounds and prove their intellect, they generally go farther in society, which is then merged or combined with a firm that is interested in acquiring the asset. RMTs originated as a result of a 1966 ruling in a lawsuit against the Internal Revenue Service, which created a tax loophole to avoid taxes when selling unwanted assets. The RMT starts with the parent company looking to sell assets to a third-party company. Does that sound familiar? If you're born in the United States, yet it's recorded in the state, it's kind of the same situation. The parent company then creates a subsidiary, and that subsidiary and the third-party company merge to create an unrelated company. The unrelated company then issues shares to the original parent company's shareholders. If those shareholders control at least 50.1% of the voting right and economic value in the unrelated company, the RMT is complete. The parent company has effectively transferred the assets tax-free to the third party. Before we go any further, does that sound familiar?
Yeah. Debt collection, right?
Well, it's the enumeration at birth. Does that sound familiar? I mean, that sounds like
Sounds familiar.
that mom was the third party, and in that they created a subsidiary and sold off the assets to the state. That's why the state is claiming all the assets. Why? The inherent power or possession of property is supposedly held with the state as well. So it's interesting how they word this stuff, and when you look back and see how it correlates in that wording. Tax-free to the third party. The parent company has effectively transferred the assets tax-free to the third party. The key feature to preserve the tax-free status of a RMT is that after its formation, stockholders of the original parent company own at least 50.1% of the value and voting rights of the combined or merged firm. That's the democracy you have, or that you see in this nation. And that merger is important. You hear me talking about the resurrection and merger in a new name. So even though it's presumed in the record, it's never been qualified, but yet it's still being handled as if though it's in a democratic status. And this makes the RMT only attractive for third-party companies that are about the same size or smaller than the spun-off subsidiary. I don't know if that's quite as true in this day and age. If everybody's information is being used to generate income for these other third parties off these credit default swaps, I would think that seems to be the most inherently valuable thing in this modern age, and it's just like the mortgage swaps. They just went from mortgage swaps to credit default swaps. And again, it's all based on that signature. If it's not qualified, somebody's going to get their grubby hands in there, or already has, and they're going to remove any kind of value. It's also worth mentioning that the third-party company in a RMT has more flexibility in acquiring control of its board of directors and appointing senior management, despite holding a non-controlling stake in the trust. The third party has more flexibility in acquiring control of its board of directors and appointing senior management, despite holding a non-controlling stake in the trust. Customer agrees to make third-party payment, so long as it's considered that, or understood, that credit is given to the customer's account. The customer is the third party. The consumer is the person. And the United States is the one that created that person. So in all cases, you're already the third party in those situations as the benefactor. And this is why it's important to recognize all these situations as trusts. The difference between a Morris trust and a reverse Morris trust is that in a Morris trust, the parent company merges with the target company and no subsidiary is created. So the reverse Morris trust is where a subsidiary is created, and a regular Morris trust is just a merger. And that's what we're doing. We're going to get rid of that reverse Morris trust that seems to be in play and do a straight up merger. Examples of a reverse Morris trust. A telecom company, say like AT&T, that wishes to sell old landlines to smaller companies in rural areas could use this technique. The telecom company might not wish to spend the time or resources to upgrade those lines to broadband or fiber optic lines. So it could sell those assets using this tax efficient transfer. In 2007, Verizon, get back to my page here. Verizon Communications announced a planned sale of its landline operations in certain lines in the Northeast region to Fairpoint Communications. To meet the tax-free transaction qualification, Verizon transferred unwanted landline operation assets to a separate subsidiary and distributed its shares to its existing shareholders. So when the local hospital created that document, it created an asset, and then they sell that asset. That's the asset that generates everything. That is the wanted asset. Without that individual private name and number in that system, a fictional corporation doesn't have assets. Even a fictional corporation only has assets through its own private stockholders, shareholders. They're the ones putting assets into the company through their investments. When Mom did that signing, it created an investment. That's the asset. Verizon then completed a RMT reorganization with Fairpoint that gave the original Verizon shareholders a majority stake in the newly merged company and Fairpoint's original management the green light to run the newly formed business. So the parent company that sold it off, the shareholders remained with a majority stake. So even though it was sold off, Mom remains with the majority stake. In another example, Lockheed Martin divested from its information system and global solutions business segment in 2016. Like Verizon, it underwent RMT by forming a new offshoot company that then merged with Leidos Holdings, a defense and information technology company. Leidos Holdings paid a $1.8 billion cash payment, while Lockheed Martin reduced approximately 3% of its outstanding common shares. Lockheed Martin stockholders involved in the transaction then owned a 50.5% stake in Leidos. Overall, the transaction was valued at an estimated $4.6 billion. A reverse Morris trust is a strategic way to divest of division tax-free, provided that all legal requirements are met. To undergo a reverse Morris trust, a company will create a new company for this division, then merge it with another company. Importantly, shareholders of the parent company must own over 50% of the newly created company. Why do companies choose a reverse Morris trust? When a company is looking to focus on its core operations and sell assets in a tax-efficient manner, it may choose a reverse Morris trust. This allows the parent company to raise money and help reduce its debt while selling unwanted business assets. This is the old equipment. A pizza joint sells off its old equipment, not because it's going out of business, because they want better equipment. So they're going to sell off the old equipment that's losing asset value because of its age. This type of transaction can be useful to companies that are highly indebted. Highly indebted. If you're highly indebted, why would you want to sell off assets? To recoup that debt? So in creating a merger like that, you're selling off assets, creating a third company, and selling those assets to that third company to relieve the debt. And you see what's going on? They create a company to sell off the debts to, and that's a new company. So is that new company in debt? It just acquired all them nice assets. Where did it get the money or the funds to acquire them assets, especially if it's spun off from the company that is selling the assets? Only, let's see, part of the reason behind this is that certain requirements follow for reverse Morris trust. Only certain companies can apply, and they must have generated positive income in the 5 years prior to the transaction, among other things. So we have a system that is allowing people to merge things as long as they're doing things with a positive aspect, and they can, it's almost like redeeming by selling off assets to get rid of a debt through a merger that merges right back in with the company or its shareholders. See how it works? See, the shareholders maintain that 50.1% of the vote in the assets. So what do you guys think so far?
Sounds like a sweet deal.
Yeah, so if we learn how to do that with our own debt, you guys understand how to set up a trust. It's just merely making the claim to the property and who gets to distribute it or handle it as a transfer agent. It's pretty much the same thing that we just read. You've got, what did it say? Let's see here. The RMT starts with a parent company looking to sell assets to a third-party company. The parent company then creates a subsidiary, and that subsidiary and a third-party company merge. So in the creation of a subsidiary, there's a third company that's going to buy off that assets, but it's going to merge with the subsidiary that the parent company created, so it still belongs to the parent company. So then what happened to the debt? It's still there, it just got merged. It's sitting on a different set of books, as if though it's a different company, because it's been titled a different company and then merged with another company.
But all in all, it has never been properly qualified, right?
Correct. It's kind of like them floating rate notes. It's just a floating debt. So the United States is in debt. They've got a third-party company, Mom, and they're going to merge with the asset by buying that asset and merging that new company with the United States. That seems to be what's happening through the enumeration at birth. See what we got to say. The full legal name is their asset. Absolutely. You gave them a given name and a family name, and they translated it to a legal name in documentation, and now that's their asset. But because it's a usufruct system, and they used your name and gave you instrumentality to use in exchange, and nobody's understanding this, and nobody's taught how to use that instrument in exchange, so that it's effectively a gift like it's meant to be. This is a problem with the education system. If the United States poses that they're going to confer nationality upon people that are born on the land, you would think that one of their inherent interests in that is that it wouldn't be committed to fraud, waste, and abuse, but actually be founded with a proper education so you could use it appropriately and make a lot of wealthy people instead of cornering all of the wealth in the top part of the pyramid. Because that's truly what it is, folks. It's a pyramid scheme. So anything else? This is, I just wanted to do this short stream this morning or this afternoon to discuss that, because I think that's what's happening. And like we talk about all the time, or I talk about all the time, it's a matter of the prodigal son returning back to the estate. And there are certain things that parable talks about. And part of it is the indentured servitude, where once he's went through his life and spent all of his estate as a spendthrift, that's what the Social Security is. It's a spendthrift trust. So as we're going through our life, spendthrifting as a ignorant being, we have to end up in a spot where we do some indentured servitude. Mine is the last 7 years where I've been doing this research so that I could figure everything out for myself and return to my own estate. Like I said, I've been screaming, "You ain't my daddy," all my life. And I think that's one of the main things that people need to understand in this gift system and usufruct. Because I had a hard time with it when I first started doing my research. I was pissed. I was angry. I'd been arrested 93 times, thrown in court, whatever. Just too much of this kind of shit goes on when it would seem a lot easier just to teach the people how it works so that we could be a strong nation instead of a dumbed down one. What do you guys think?
I agree. I always say, if I'm out there digging a hole for $100, who's this son of a bitch at 135?
Yep. Yep. Who's under?
I mean, come on.
Yep, that's what I always thought. No one has the fruit to my labor but me.
That's right.
They still do it, though. Time to put an end to that shit.
So I think DC stands for data conversion, Keith. You know, Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
As in Washington, D.C., yeah.
Yeah, or debt charter.
Well, yeah, that could be it. I don't know. It actually, at one point, they wanted to change it to Douglas County when they were vying for their statehood here a few years back. But again, the United States as a corporate entity can't have statehood. It's an impossibility. And that's why I urge everybody to think about this sovereignty thing that they pose. It's not true sovereignty in a corporate entity. Okay? Sovereignty does not exist in a material form. It does not exist in a physical form. Sovereignty is a concept. And as a corporate entity, you cannot have sovereignty. You can have sovereign multilateral agreements, but you cannot have sovereignty in the corporation itself. It doesn't exist.
Another one of those impossibilities.
Right.
And my apologies for my avatar. I was playing around last night and was on a panel as a secret squirrel, so. All right, one last thing I want to read here. It's a little bit of reading, and this is it's called the paper question, and that's what we're dealing with in constructing these trusts and everything. It's a paper issue, and it goes to the value of the paper and how much they have to make. So, like I said, it's called the paper question. This is a 278-page PDF. It's called The Way to Outdo England Without Fighting Her. It says, letter first. The gentlemen connected with the press, publishers of books and newspapers, have been for 2 years past and are yet engaged in the performance of an act that, as it seems to me, closely resembles suicide. And it is because of my desire to open their eyes to the fact that it really is suicidal in its tendencies that I venture to trouble you with the perusal of this letter. Throughout by far the larger portion of my life, I was one among them, and although many years have elapsed since I ceased to be connected with the publication or business of publication, the feeling of interest in those concerned in it has remained wholly unimpaired. It is therefore, as an old friend, late co-laborer with themselves, a fellow citizen, having no interest in the question, except in common with all who are around him, that to you, and through you to them, I prepare to speak, hoping that they may be disposed to reflect carefully on the views that will be presented, and confidently believing that they may be satisfied that their recent course of proceeding, however injurious it may be to the makers of paper, tends to the production of results utterly destructive to themselves. Most naturally, they are anxious that paper shall be cheap and that their business may be large and profitable. This goes to the fact that paper is something used as a medium to transfer and express intangible thought. Intangible thought is itself the origin of all value. Once you put it on paper, it becomes lesser value. You put it out and express it to others, it becomes lesser value. They don't see the value in it as the originator. This is the importance of learning how to express yourself. So, am I, well knowing as I do, that it is to the universal development of intellect among our people that we now stand indebted for the fact that this union has been maintained, and that if we are to prosper in the future, it is in the direction of a further and more complete development of the national mind that prosperity must be sought. This is why I say that education system, if we want a prosperous nation, strong, healthy, hearty, prosperous nation, we have to use that public education system to do so. And if it's not working that way, then we have to learn how to educate our own children for its fallacies. To that end, books and newspapers must be placed within the reach of all, old and young, poor and rich, black and white. Thus, fully agreeing with them in the result at which we should desire to arrive, I propose now to ask both you and them to look with me to the measures by which it may be attained. To that end, allow me now to ask the question, what are the circumstances under which commodities of all kinds tend to become cheaper? See, that's what we're dealing with, is the inflation and interest rates and taxes all going up. They're getting more and more expensive instead of becoming cheaper. Is it not when and where there is competition for their sale? What, on the contrary, are those in which they tend to become dearer? Is it not when and where there is competition for their purchase? We're talking about the supply and demand. To these questions, there can be but one reply, and that in the affirmative. It is only when you want to buy and sell things that things have those increasing values. What now, I would ask, has been the tendency of the action of our publishing friends throughout the last 2 years? Has it tended to promote the building of mills and the increase of competition for the sale of paper? As it seems to me, it has not. On the contrary, as I propose to show, it has been in a direction exactly the reverse of this. And that's where I'm going to end the reading. Just a presentation to allow you to see beginning of this writing, and I dropped the link in the chat. There's but in order for anything from a intangible thought process to be expressed in a creative form, that itself is a creation. It already has a value, and it's just a matter of determining what is a exchangeable value, a medium of exchange. When we go about this life, thinking about the material things that we need to use in life, is there greater value for its use by us solely for our own prosperity so we can replenish things? Or is there an act in doing the other things that we've been indoctrinated into life, like making automobiles? Is there a way to replenish the earth through the use of automobiles? Is there a way to replenish the earth by the manufacture of these things we call homes, houses, dwellings, and such? I mean, is that really serving a useful purpose for the value it's intended to, which is safety? Or is it being used for a greater purpose, such as premises, so that they can sell things through a set of paperworks? And the thing I'm getting at here is when we talk about that Morris Trust and the reverse Morris Trust, are you going to think about the original trust, or are you going to continue operating in the reverse trust? Because that's what I've been telling people all along, is this trust system that we have in this material world is a fictional trust. The real trust is inside each and every one of us, and it's an intangible. You can express it, but it's an intangible concept, this thing, trust, just like love. It's an intangible concept that can be expressed. And what's happening through this public education system and this government that's going on, it's not being expressed for its interest that it should be. And that is the prosperity and intellect. It's being handled strictly for profit, for greed. People that are greedy. And again, I assure you, and I will stand on this to the end of the earth, if you're involved in that commercial system and you don't know what you're doing and you think you're making good money, what you're doing is you're taking profits that are dependent upon the loss of another man. Now, if you're in a contract and you're not giving equal consideration and equal benefit, that means there's detriment to another party. That's the loss of another man. And again, I don't care if you don't realize it or not, but everybody out there with a job is not getting paid the value they should be getting paid, because they didn't actually negotiate that document the way they should have. If they had known what that document truly is, and if they had, I'm sure anybody of competency and sound mind would have negotiated it for their most certain benefit and not for their loss.
Sounds like the definition of capitalism, to benefit off someone else's lack of skill or knowledge.
Exactly. That's what this entire world runs on now, is capitalism. The whole thing. I don't care what kind of government you're running. It's still run on a capitalist society. That's why these commercial laws are run by the international venue. It's not just the United States. They're all working together. And it's that enumeration at birth that people don't understand. It's a gift. And it's not reaching its full potential. The gift, underlying issues are the principles of prosperity and education of knowing how to use that gift, because that gift will last your entire life and then beyond.
Yeah.
It's not like, yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah, and the definition of job is criminal outfit. At least that's what my notes say. And
Just
also
above broke.
occupation means seizure. So there it is.
Yes. And that's why people look at me all strange when I talk about seizure laws and stuff. Bombardments and seizures, buildings under seizure. Those are terms of war. So it doesn't matter whether we're not at war or not. Those are terms of war, and it is an occupancy, and they will come and besiege your house if you don't make payment to the military. It's an occupying military force.
Seizure,
That's why
Caesar.
Yep, and that's why you have a job, and it's called a career or an occupation, as John just said. And career, you know what career means?
It sounds like Kareen.
Yeah, when you're playing pool and you hit that ball and that ball's flying down that table, it's going fast. It's going to hit another ball and careen off of it. It's also known as career off. You're going to career off of the ball. It's amazing. And career means to run fast. So you're going forward fast, moving fastly forward instead of living in the now. Fast forward. They're all future debts. Fast forward to the future debt. Well, I gotta work today, because if I don't work today, I'm gonna have to pay that debt in 30 days. It's called rent. I gotta pay that debt that's due in 30 days. Oh no, man, anything. And everybody's been taught and indoctrinated into living in fear of a debt. That if they don't work now, so that they can pay that debt later, then something terrible is going to happen. I think, again, the true key or the true benefit to all of this, and the key is that knowledge. That's the benefit. And if the public education system isn't going to teach it, we need more people out here doing this research so we can teach it to each other and learn together, because this system didn't work the way it was supposed to. It's a reverse Morris trust situation. It's got underlying intent that would qualify it as a more competent and prosperous situation, but nobody's been taught. Okay, let me check comments. Second half of the law of thermodynamics, that energy goes from higher to lower as it is used. Entropy, yes. Every taxpayer is a Sedequate trust. Like the ether, which is the continuous energy that runs this realm, is intangible but can be brought into use. Yes. UCC is not an owned thing, it is an intangible collection or a tangible collection of intangible thoughts known as contract clauses. When you read the UCC, that's a bunch of conditions of contract clauses. So that when you do a UCC 1-308, you can put the UCC 1-308, but the perfect contract clause is without recourse. It's saying without recourse, without prejudice, all rights reserved. It's a contract clause. And all you got to do is learn how to put those various different clauses in your contracts. Not liable for person named not liable for the person named in the instrument on the signature. Customer agrees to make third-party payment so long as it's understood that credit is given to the customer's account. These are all things that are contract clauses. And it's a statement that you can put into a contract to make the contract. If it's not there, learn what those contract clauses are and learn how to put them in. How can we have a nation full of people that are supposed to be competent to contract in and among each other in peaceful times, but yet don't know how to contract? That's the problem. And with that, we are done. Go ahead, brother.
No, I was just saying, yep, they should be teaching that while we're young.
Absolutely. What do you got, Russ?
Not much. I mean, I would agree with that. It seems that everything seems to be so complicated, but yet so easy not to cheat one another.
Well, yeah, but see, the thing is that, again, part of the problem with the public education system is that you send your children to learn opposing dynamics. Now, the opposing dynamics, and I firmly believe that we should all be teaching our own children. The opposing dynamics that you end up with in school is that you have other children that have different lifestyles and stuff, and even the teacher may have different lifestyles. And so we have people out of convenience and comfort sending their children to a public school to have their children taught in a system where they're supposed to be teaching them reading, writing, and arithmetic, and don't do near enough of a qualified job to do so. And then amongst that, you have the subjective viewpoints of all these other people that you're sending your children to, whether it be the gym teacher, the history teacher, the reading teacher, the literature teacher, the art teacher, the other students. They all have their opposing dynamic views, subjective views. And for such young minds, it's a confusion state. Whereas if mom and dads would teach their children strictly, and I don't mean strictly behavior-wise, I mean strictly without any other interference, they would be able to teach their children their viewpoints of how to live in the world, and it wouldn't be a matter of racist or this is better or this is better. It's just everybody has different ways of doing things. And as we learn in societies many times throughout history, sometimes we learn better from each other on an individual basis because we see, oh, wait a minute, I see he has a better way of doing things because it turns out better. You know, I'm sure the first one that started making butter, I don't know how that happened. I mean, I don't know why somebody would sit there and do this with a stick in a bucket full of milk for all day long and know that they would come out with butter. I don't know how that happens. But I know somewhere along the line, it came about that we now have butter because somebody did something. Somebody else repeated it and found a better way to do it, and it just keeps getting better and better. Supposedly, that's the way you would think things would grow, but instead there's a depreciation. There's not a replenishment. We're actually depleting the earth with all this stuff that we think is so much better, and it's not. I think people have become very delusional.
And I'm sure there's so many brilliant minds out there that they have just boxed in all, I just imagine where we could have been.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yep.
You know, when I realized that I was 50 years old, and my mom stood there and looked at me and said, "Keith, the police, your authority." And like I've said before, Paul's a young man in his mid-30s that's already got this stuff pretty pat as far as concept. And You know, if I'd have been in his position, 20 years ago, I'd have 20 years on what I'm doing now. And this is the stuff that we need to teach our children at the right point and keep them out of them public schools. Again, just my opinion, that confuses them through all those different opposing dynamics. I think if we bring our children up with a singular dynamic, particularly in the spiritual sense, I think the spiritual dynamic is more closely related throughout the cultures than any kind of readings or writings or technologies or cultural activities. The actual spirituality concept permeates every culture, whereas the different techniques that they go about expressing that is what varies. But the spiritual connection always seems to be there, and it seems that they always relate it to, the spirits in the sky, the ascension, whatever it is. After we are done with this life, we somehow ascend. So, and I think that's one of the things that we need to start concentrating on is helping the children understand that spiritual concept first and foremost, rather than the material concept of even the Paperwork Reduction Act, which kind of touched that paper, that final paper I just read, just kind of touched on it. And that's literally why we have the Paperwork Reduction Act, because they know this. They know that it's the publishing of all of these things throughout history is not inducive to the profit of the paper companies themselves, but the publishers. So why did the paper companies invent paper? They saw a profit. Well, the majority of the profit comes from the authorship of putting something to it, merging something with it.
Yep.
And that's where I believe that must be in good works.
Metaversal Miscreant says, Wizard, can you briefly speak about exclusions in trusts, excluding government, policy enforcers, religious establishment, and employees of the USA? A trust is a trust, and the members are named in that trust. That is the exclusion. If you're not named in the trust, you're excluded. So in my trust, it includes people of the world. So it excludes United States agents. It excludes residents. It excludes anything that doesn't or is not of the like kind of people. It excludes persons. It's a matter of knowing the language and how to express it and know what you're talking about. So that when somebody does ask a question like that, you can explain it to them. Well, it doesn't include persons, just people, and there's a distinction. And that's as simple as it gets. And you cannot copyright your name. Listen, folks. You can trademark and create a logo. You can trade name. And the copyright goes to the works published under a trade name or trademark. You don't copyright the name. You trademark the name. And with that, if you guys got anything, now's the time to say it, because we're going to finish up, and I'm going to go get me a bite to eat.
Yeah, I think I'm good, brother. I appreciate the time this evening or this afternoon with you. And right. Be the change you wish to see, people.
And I'll get to you, and Truth and Empowerment, I'll get to you here in a short bit, as far as the email is concerned.
Awesome. Sounds good, man. Good stuff.
All right. Excellent. Thanks. I want to thank everybody for joining me today. I always appreciate the support. And I will be back tonight. It is Saturday night. I'll probably be back at 9 with some more on the next video from Paths to Freedom. And we will hopefully see everybody back then. So in the meantime, remember, I love you. I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back or not. And that's to say, I don't care if you hate me. So may God bless you and have a good day.